Madam Chair. We're working on the YouTube streaming, so if you can wait till I give you a thumbs up to move forward.
Sounds good.
Looks like we're ready to go, Madam Chair.
Thanks, Dr. Gandhi. Welcome everybody to the August 13th, 2024 meeting of the Arizona State Board of Pharmacy Complaint Review Committee. The time is 1 o'clock and I'll call the meeting to order. Dr. Gandhi, if you could take roll call and conflicts of interest to establish the quorum.
Certainly, Madam Chair. Ms. Walmsley?
Present. I submitted my recusals in writing, but will be recused from items 4B, 4E, 4G, 4H, 4I, 4L, 4O, and 4U.
Thank you. Ms. Nair?
I am here and I'm recused from 4J, and it's due to my employer.
Mr. Thorwald?
I'm here and I have no conflicts.
Good. Mr. Nassif?
I'm here. I have one conflict for this meeting for item 4A.
Sounds good. Just a friendly reminder that as we get to that agenda item, if you can just state your recusal at that time as well, so that we can keep it in a timeline. That'd be great. Madam Chair, we have a quorum, not a quorum. Well, we do have a quorum, and we may proceed.
Quorum of the committee. Quorum of the
Yes.
committee.
Quorum of the committee.
Well, the good news is it doesn't sound like we have any overlap on recusals, so we should be good to proceed. Let's jump in with item 4A, complaint number 24-0177.
So I am recused. I cannot turn my camera and mute myself.
Thank you. This is an incorrect medication was filled and dispensed to a patient. Thoughts or discussion?
I think if we consider just culture as we're kind of attempting to redefine how we're handling these things, they didn't follow the policy. The error, I mean, it falls within the 3 hours of non-disciplinary CE. I do see that there's room for improvement here, but I recommend the 3 hours of non-disciplinary CE for the pharmacist.
I would be supportive of that.
I'll make that my motion.
In what area?
In error prevention.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
A motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none and noting recusal. Ms. Nair, do you want to handle my recusals, please?
Sure.
Thank you. If you could take 4B.
Yep. Item 24-0249. The patient received the incorrect quantity of medication. I would say it sounds to me as if they handled the issue very well once it had occurred. And I would recommend 3 hours of non-disciplinary CE for the pharmacist and the technician, and accept the CE that's been done once it's verified by the board staff.
Second.
Okay. Any other discussion before we vote? Okay. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Thank you.
Item 4C, complaint number 24-0176. A complainant alleged that a prescription container filled for 30 tablets contained only 24.
I was recommending dismissal. I don't see enough proof to verify that there was a violation.
I
Yeah,
would support that.
I would support that.
I'll make that my motion, dismiss.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Item 4D, complaint number 24-0304, a licensee failed to respond to a subpoena.
So we still don't have any response, I take it. So I would make a motion to move to hearing.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Item 4E. If you could take that one, Ms. Nair.
Sure. A licensee may have failed to report charges within 10 working days.
So,
I have a, go ahead.
oh, go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. Go ahead.
I just like about thinking about the type of the charge. I would like to move for a hearing.
Yeah, I agree with you to move towards hearing. I also think that we should offer voluntary surrender. I don't know that this person wants to continue in this career field. So if you want to make a motion, I'd appreciate if you added that as a possible outcome as well.
Yeah, so my motion is move for hearing unless the individual choose to surrender his or her license. Voluntarily surrender.
Is that correctly stated, Ms. Galvin? Is that fine? Okay, I'll second that. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Nair. Item 4F, complaint number 24-0207. A permit holder abandoned a pharmacy and failed to comply with the rule for discontinuing a pharmacy.
Is there any standard for notice the board 14 days before closure?
You
There is
know, I couldn't find that on our grid.
I couldn't. Yeah.
I noticed there was a $500 penalty for not notifying before you
Really,
relocate.
right, yeah.
Kind of similarly. The thing is here, I feel like they abandoned their patients, which is even more troublesome to me.
That was my thought, Ms. Nair, as well. I had a question for the staff. Is the owner a licensed pharmacist, and why wasn't the PIC named? I guess I have two questions.
Mhm.
Steve Hyber here, guys. Good questions all. The owner is not a pharmacist, and the PIC was no longer employed by the owner. So, the pharmacy hadn't closed yet. The PIC left. The owner was unable to hire a new pharmacist. And then at some point, the owner stopped paying the landlord. And then the landlord locked the facility in order to take back over so they could lease it. And then counsel for the landlord reached out to us, and the rest is in the report as to what occurred. The landlord really shouldered a lot of the responsibilities that would have been required by the permit holder. And the permit holder is nowhere to be found. I believe last time I spoke with them, they were on the East Coast somewhere. So.
And I assume probably the reason why they didn't do all the notification is because they couldn't find an owner, but nevertheless, they didn't appropriately transfer the medications and dispose of them, or
Right.
they didn't
Correct.
notify patients, and there wasn't a way for them to get access to their records either.
No, and the landlord really shouldered that burden, and they properly disposed of the inventory that was left. There were no controls. We went out there with the DEA and did a walkthrough. The owner or the landlord was kind enough to let us in, and the records now are on a hard drive in a safe deposit box under control of the owners.
So there is no control medication because they send it back to manufacturer, or
The controls had been disposed of probably back December of 23. So I believe the owner knew the business was struggling. He had lost, or she had lost, some accounts. And they were still trying to keep their head above water when, I guess, at some point, they decided to abandon the pharmacy. So
How do you, how can, given that it's an owner and it's not a pharmacist, how is that, how do we alert other boards around the nation that this happened and that this person left? How is that in the works? So it's somehow noted that on the record that this has occurred, so that people will look for it in the future. If he wants to open another pharmacy.
And Mr. Thorwell, that's one reason why staff wanted to get it in front of the board, because I believe if you could do some discipline on the permit, at least the record can go into NABP associated with that particular individual, and hopefully they won't be able to come back and open another pharmacy somewhere and have this repeat. Obviously, if we were to impose a fine, more than likely they wouldn't pay it, but at least we'd have a record of that.
Is the record stronger if you impose a fine versus not imposing a fine, or more significant? I mean, when you file it nationally.
Well, for it to be reported, it would have to be disciplinary, correct? Gene and Seth?
Thing is, if you offered a fine, I don't think we can fine them. You know, it looks like the address of record we have for them is the address that we know that they've abandoned. I don't know, and maybe Cam can answer this. Is there kind of secondary contact information that we could, send something to? But, it may just be a matter of going through the motions of a hearing, but even then, I don't know that we can, other than sending it to the email address, that we can make proper notice.
Yeah, initially when we were looking at this and we opened a complaint, we were in communication via email and they did respond for a little while. But it looked like they were kind of stringing us along. And nothing came about it at the end of the day. So we do have a valid email address if we need to communicate with them.
And so we know that the email address was valid at one point. If the board goes to the hearing route, unless we could follow through that way with notice of the hearing. If that gets kicked back as, not being valid anymore, that may be an issue we have to address. But at this point, it does sound like there is a way to get them notice.
Can you do a public notice in a paper to get around that?
Well, we do, right? Well, we can send it to the address of record, which we know is abandoned. We have their email address. We can send it there. I don't think we need to do secondary notice unless that gets kicked back as undeliverable or undelivered.
I just was asking because I would hate to see somebody be able to get by with this in the future because we didn't give a proper notice to them.
Well, what we've seen in the past is it's because it's associated with their name, even if they decide to open another pharmacy with a different business name, their personal name is still attached to it. So that at least helps that there's discipline under that person's name.
What I meant by that was a legal roundabout. In other words, and I'm not saying that correctly, a loophole. So you open a pharmacy somewhere else, you haven't been properly noticed. So if you haven't been properly noticed and you are fined or been given discipline, it could be set aside because you didn't get proper notice.
If an option is that we can set it forth for hearing, I would be in favor of that. And then we could decide what level of discipline to impose. But I would be in favor of that, knowing that we're probably not going to get anywhere on a consent agreement. But if they do show up, we could issue a fine or something like that. But I have a feeling they're probably not going to participate in this whole process.
Actually, looking at the file online, it appears that the named individual, we do have two other addresses for them in Gilbert that we could try as well. So we can send notice to all known addresses for the owner.
That would be a good option.
Okay, if we want to move forward the hearing, I'll go ahead and make that my motion to move to hearing.
Second,
A motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Ms. Nair, if you could take the next three for me, please.
Sure. 4G item 24-0256. A prescription was issued with conflicting information and filled out without clarifying the prescription with the prescriber.
Yeah, I was reading this complaint, and it goes back to, from my perspective, when the sick says for 30 days, right? And from my experience, that can be default sick. Like when a provider use EMR, they, whatever they put on those boxes will show as the default sick. So now I don't see like errors, like right medication, right direction, and the errors start from the provider side. If there's any error, but I mean, just like doctor sent the wrong quantity. So to me, I don't think that be fair to hold pharmacists accountable, unless if anybody has different opinion.
Well, first, I think a letter of concern would be appropriate for the technician regarding do you have any questions for the pharmacist instead of getting them to counseling? So just kind of, reinforcing the fact that the technician needs to get them to the pharmacist to be counseled, because that's the way it reads now that they're supposed to be doing, instead of asking, do you have any questions? I think that would be appropriate. I still think it's misbranding, right? It would be incorrectly prescribed. Trying to remember exactly.
No, provider wrote for quantity 30 twice a day, which makes it 15.
Oh, right.
So basically, the pharmacy staff follow this order exactly the same way that provider prescribed. Now, they could have done better job with just because of why it says 30 days, but it's 15-day supply. But again, when you go to, in general, like that can be a default sick. Like you've seen, like, for 30 days, for 90 days, it is how that EMR built. So from my perspective, like they could have done a better job. I mean, I'll be fine with a letter of concern to a pharmacist or dismiss. That's my opinion.
I think I still do see it as an error because there was a discrepancy between the way that it was written and the way that it was intended, because it says for a 30-day supply, and it would have only been a 15-day supply, correct? I'm trying to recall how it was written. And yes, it was quantity of 30 twice a day for a 30-day supply. And you're saying the 30-day supply is just something that gets added on to because of the electronic health record?
Correct.
It was, guys, I'll jump in. It was a notation. Just, you know how these prescriptions will have a little comment line.
Yeah.
That's further down. You look on the image is on page 361. And, you can see it's not up in the body of the script. So, it probably wasn't seen. So, they filled it as written. but it
Gotcha.
wasn't, it turned out to be not 30 days supply. So,
Tarek, I'd be in favor of a letter of concern.
I'd second that.
To both the pharmacist and the tech?
Yes, and I would add to the technician what I was mentioning before about counseling, the responsibility to get the patient to counseling. I'll make that my motion.
Second,
All those in favor?
aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Okay, 4H, item 24-0238. The wrong strength of medication was dispensed by the pharmacy.
So. Three hours of continuous education in addition to biannual required CE. Non-disciplinary.
Right. The only thing I want to bring up is 3 DURs were overridden in this case. It's just that it keeps coming up that there's these DURs that are white noise. I just think it's worth a discussion of how we handle this type of thing. Do you recall what we did before when there was a process in place and it was overridden by the pharmacist or technician?
As far I remember, we asked the permit holder for hearing, and that's what we did for that. As far as I remember, I don't know if there's any case before.
I thought we either gave more CE or we possibly made it
Okay.
disciplinary.
I was thinking we gave more CE. But I can't remember clearly.
It just does change things a little bit because we're looking at what processes are in place and the process is there, but it's being circumvented. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
I agree with you.
Okay, we go with. I'm fine.
You're fine with more CE?
Yeah, we got 6 hours instead of 3.
Okay, that's fine. We can do that.
And what?
Okay, you wanna me make a motion? I'm making my motion. 6 hours CE non-disciplinary about error prevention or patient safety. That's in
Okay.
addition to the required CE for renewal.
Second,
Okay, all those in favor? Aye.
aye.
Any opposed? Okay. 4I, item 24-0100. A licensee may have failed to report charges within 10 working days, failed to disclose charges on their initial license application, failed to comply with a subpoena, and failed to report a charge in her contact or a change in her contact information.
Yeah, there is many violation there. So I will move for hearing, and this is my motion. For hearing.
I second that.
Can I make one suggestion, kind of like we did before, that we would accept a voluntary surrender or move to hearing?
I add this to my motion.
And I modify my second for that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thanks. And then I am recused on 4J.
Listener, item 4J, complaint number 24-0229. The complainant alleged that the pharmacy technician gave her the incorrect medication at the pickup window.
I will.
CE,
That's kind of my thought for the selling technician.
yes.
So Yeah, I go, yeah, for technician, I drop pharmacist and PIC. So dismiss for pharmacist and PIC and just CE for technician.
Yeah, I believe in this case it was technician MB that's listed in the complaint. And what would be the content of the CE, Tariq?
I'm sorry?
What would be the topic of the CE?
Yeah, as a CE for the technician, CE about patient safety or error prevention, one or the other, 3 hours non-disciplinary for the technician and dismiss other listed individuals. And this is my motion.
I have a
Second,
second. I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Item 4K, complaint number 24-0290. The complainant alleged failure to counsel on a new to therapy medication.
I would recommend 3 hours of non-disciplinary CE for the tech and the pharmacist. I mean, I wish that we heard a little more about their process improvement when they responded, just a little comment, but in error prevention beyond what's required with our standard terms.
I have to say that I always have concern in this because you might have been, if a person's hard of hearing, you might not hear that they were asked, or they may not. To me, it's a hard thing to say somebody was asked or not asked in a different environment. And so I just have concern in, and I'm not expressing it well, was there video that anything that showed that the person wasn't asked? Because if there's nothing that really shows that they weren't asked, it's a he said, she said kind of thing to me. And I would think that unless you have that, to me, it's more, you should dismiss it, even though that is an issue in my mind.
Yeah, I think what you're saying is there sufficient evidence to hold them accountable
That's correct.
because the record was deleted? And
That
it's
is-
really
that-
just their word against the patient's word.
That's correct.
Well, but wasn't it a new, it was a new therapy? And they just said, do you have any questions? And I just don't think that's sufficient enough to say, do you have any questions? When the pharmacists come over, I've heard them talk to patients and say, do you have any questions? Just a reminder, this one, you want to stay out of the sun or whatever. And it gives you an opportunity to kind of suss out what kind of information the patient needs. And that leads to other questions. So kind of yelling across the pharmacy, no questions, isn't really doing a sufficient job of counseling on a new therapy.
But do we know what words that technician used? Did they say this is a new prescription, you need to speak with the pharmacist, and the patient says, I don't have any questions, and the pharmacist hears that conversation and that can be accepted as a declination? I mean, we don't know the words that occurred.
That's true. Mr. Leong, wanted to jump on, I think.
Yeah, thank you. This is Trim Leong, compliance officer. On page 542, I think some of the debate that I had bringing this case in front of the board for discussion was just the way that the technician stated and kind of described in her own words that she understood that the complainant was also a licensed technician, and she basically had it tested in her written response that she knows how everything works. She continued threatening behavior until she left and never inquired about nor requested any counseling. So I think if we take a look at our rules and statutes of mandatory counseling, we know that technicians can't accept a refusal of counsel even if they did not have any questions. So that was part of the reason why this case was in front of you guys today.
I've forgotten about that. It does add a different dimension too, that somebody who works in pharmacy that they knew was responding that way. That might have to do with how they accepted that information.
To me, it's either dismiss or worst case scenario, a letter of concern.
Or I'm not opposed to CE. I mean, the reality of it is their non-disciplinary CE is not something that is disciplinary in nature. It's not going to follow the person. I think people can always learn from the situation. Just because the person was a technician doesn't mean they should be treated differently.
I could go with that.
I think I made that in my motion at one point,
And that was to the tech.
and the pharmacist. I said to both, but I don't know
Okay.
what everyone believes. I kind of feel like it was on both of them, if we're going that route.
Okay.
So 3 hours in non-disciplinary CE and patient safety for the technician and the pharmacist listed is what I'm hearing. Do I have a second?
I'm hesitant, but I'll do the second.
Yeah,
Well, let's discuss then.
yeah, I mean, from my perspective, like letter of concern, like will be enough in this case. There is no harm for a patient, there is no error, there is no mistake. The disputing is how technician ask patient, like, do you have a question or this is a new prescription? I agree, this is like, it's better to ask the right question for patient. I agree with that, right, 100%. And we have discussed this previously, like on the other committees. But I don't think this is standardized, like how they can or how they should ask the question, right?
Mhm.
So I believe letter of concern to pharmacist and to technician that will be strong enough message to the staff to do better in the future.
Okay. I really could go either way. I can see both sides of this for sure.
I mean, because
I have a
yeah,
question. I have a question for Dr. Gandhi. Does the letter of concern appear on our website for the person, or is that just noted in the file on the background?
A letter of concern in itself shouldn't show up, but if you attach CEs to it, I believe it has to be posted for a certain number of years.
Okay.
I would personally rather just see a letter of concern. I did second that motion, so
Yeah, I will rescind my motion. I think it's an interesting conversation.
Would you like to rescind your second?
I do. I rescind my
haven't-
second.
Do I have an alternative motion?
yeah, I make a letter of concern my motion for both individual there.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Ms. Nair, if you could do 4L, please.
Sure. Item 24-0266, the patient alleged an incorrect medication was mixed into her prescription bottle. My thought on this is that we don't have enough evidence to show a violation, and I would make a motion to dismiss.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Ms. Nair, item 4M, complaint number 24-0325. A pharmacist was working without an active license, improper documentation of person performing final product verification, and misbranded medication was dispensed.
Yeah, this is very interesting case. Like I was looking at the details, and I would like to hear from 4 licensee that listed. And this is my motion, like move for hearing.
Conference or hearing?
I mean, we should do we should do hearing first, right?
Conference is usually first.
Conference, okay, so modify my motion to conference.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Item 4N, complaint number 24-0308. The complainant, the patient's husband, alleged that the medication dispensed with a dye, even though the patient could not have a dye.
I'm not sure this is a violation for us to handle. I think, I don't know. That's my first thought. I don't know.
Did I miss it? But I didn't see anything that said the prescription itself said it shouldn't have a dye.
They'd made
Not-
notes in the pharmacy computer system, but not on the.
Right. Not on the hard copy. My thought was letter of concern to the pharmacist here. They could have been a little
Yeah.
bit more careful with the way that the notes are. I don't know that it was truly a violation, but certainly wasn't the best patient care.
I agree with this. And yeah, this will be my motion, letter of concern.
Second.
A motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Item 4O, I am recused from. Ms. Snare, if you could take that one.
Sure. The complainant prescriber alleged that the pharmacy issued his credentials to process a prescription for a Schedule II controlled substance that he did not prescribe.
Yeah, I don't think that's been done maliciously. It is error. Could be human error or system error, but happened. But definitely is not like malicious, because the way it titled is, I don't think it's.
I agree with you.
titled, You know what I mean? So, and they corrected the error. And they correct the PMP system, so it's fixed. So I'll be fine with the letter of concern to the pharmacy, to both pharmacy technician and PIC.
Okay. Hold on, I was trying to remember what roles were played here.
I mean, my understanding that it typed correctly was on hold when they pull it to fill the system, change the name because the PCP, like defaulted to the PCP name or whoever prescribed the previous prescriptions. But this should be caught for sure, 100%, right? I mean, but
I agree with the letter of concern. I was just trying to figure out which individuals we wanted to keep to have that apply to. But I'm in favor of that. If you said that was your motion,
this is my motion.
I'll second that. Any other discussion before we vote? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Item 4, complaint number 24-0313. A pharmacist was unprofessional and refused to take a verbal prescription.
So I was reading this also, and then the first question, so maybe something I'm not aware of, and I mean, so pharmacists can delegate the task of taking verbal prescription for a technician, right?
Yes, if they're trained
Okay,
to do so. The technician, they have to have documentation that they've been trained to do that task.
okay. So to me, at this point, it's a more customer service issue than like medication error or anything else.
Well, our rules do state that they have to be trained to do that task. So
Okay.
I was thinking a letter of concern to the pharmacist.
Was the pharmacist trained to do this?
The technician has to be trained to
Yes.
take, yeah. So
the question-
I was thinking, go ahead.
I was just wondering, I didn't see anything that mentioned, were they trained to do this?
Oh, there's no documentation from what I read. So
I didn't
whether
see
or not they
anything
were,
either.
there would have to be documentation that they were.
Yes, I didn't see anything
But-
either, that,
yeah,
but I
but-
just wanted to be sure.
But I wonder if there is what sort of training for some task, I mean, really, it's, you give direction. I mean, like, yeah, I take instruction verbally. Maybe like they should have like procedure how to do that, right? Like,
Well, that was kind of my concern. So in the last paragraph on the summary, complaint summary, it says that it's CVS's position that the current training adequately trains a technician to take a verbal prescription by educating them on the required elements of the said prescription in compliance with R 423-1104. CVS will explore other methods of further refining the training provided to include the receipt of verbal prescriptions. So it doesn't sound to me like they have a training program per se for this particular topic.
Right. So if they're going to be doing delegation of duties, they would need to have clear training, like sign off of or whatever. So when a compliance officer comes in, they're able to show.
Right. That was kind of my thought. So I was leaning towards perhaps a letter of concern to the permit holder and a letter of concern to the pharmacist, because the pharmacist had responsibility for knowing that that was not appropriate to delegate that if they didn't have the appropriate training. But the company, if that's a required element, should also be doing something to perhaps support that activity.
I agree with you, but I also think the tech should know as well. So it's their responsibility to know what the rules are as well. So I was leaning towards a letter of concern for all three.
Well, to me, if the person refused to take the verbal prescription, they were doing so because they felt like they weren't trained. So they were doing a correct thing.
Oh, maybe I'm missing.
I believe the pharmacist,
Yeah.
Please correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding that the pharmacist
pharmacist
refused because she asked technician to do so. And for some reason, I mean, I know like some pharmacists like to have like, double check. So they let someone else take it and then they go talk to a provider just to make sure they got it right. Because there is a big risk of taking something verbally. Like, so maybe that will happen there. And there is some kind of maybe like back and forth issue during that time, right? So maybe not became like argument or something, but I mean, I agree with if the law require sort of training or any sort of like training procedure, so I would agree with this, like letter of concern to three of them.
Yeah, if you look at the next page, it actually provides the language of 1104 that talks about the permissible duties, and that after the pharmacist on duty ensures that the pharmacy technician is trained to do so, and there is documentation.
Okay. So
Again,
that's in there, yeah.
Again, if somebody is refusing, if they're not trained and they're refusing to do this.
But I think it was a pharmacist that was refusing to take it and asked the technician to do it.
Okay,
Yes,
but
the
it
pharmacist refused to do it from the prescriber.
the pharmacist wasn't trained to do this.
No, that's
No.
part of a pharmacist's normal job responsibilities.
Okay, then I understand.
Madam
But-
Chair,
I'm
Ms.
clear
Galvin
now.
has a question.
Yes, Ms. Galvin.
With respect to the training required of technicians in order to take verbal prescriptions, would a conference help? Do we know that they don't have a program in place, or are we just kind of assuming that?
That's a fair point.
I mean, during
Hi,
this, we had
this
the
is Max
opportunity-
Jacobson.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, we asked.
Yeah, no
Max.
problem. Happy to jump in. So when I requested training documentation from this facility, they provided documentation that's on page 748 of the board book there. And you can see at the top, I highlighted that what they provided is for all new prescriptions that are presented in person. They have no training that they could point to that is for the task of a technician taking a verbal prescription order.
Just the elements of what's on a prescription, not about training for the task of taking a new prescription.
Yeah,
Correct.
I actually agree with where you're going, Miss Galvin. I think we should do a conference and hear more from the organization. And this is something that they've directed their pharmacists that they can delegate, or is this a pharmacist that was just trying to give off this activity without necessarily following the requirements?
yeah.
I think we could learn more if we have a conference.
And when I'm reading the complaint and the documents, I believe they've done that before, right? I mean, it's not something happened at that time. So it looks like it's kind of like a normal process for them to ask technicians to take verbal prescriptions. So I agree with like hear from them.
Would you like to make that your motion, Mr.
This
Naseem?
is my motion for conference. Yeah.
Do you have a second?
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
Are pharmacies, pharmacists required, and I heard you say earlier this is part of their normal duties, to be trained? Is there a requirement for training in this area?
Pharmacists,
Pharmacists? No.
Technicians, is there a requirement?
yeah,
Okay, if they take it, but if they don't take it,
They're not.
they're not required to
required
do
to
it if they're not.
Yeah.
right.
So Mike, what is, if this organization, and I'm just being hypothetical here, has no training and no policy on this, what are they violating? If we're not going to take that.
That's my point, Mr. Thorwald, is if they don't have a position on it, I don't know. I guess I don't know that we have all the answers, right? Because they may have decided that they're not going to utilize this, so they haven't created a training program.
Mhm.
So it wouldn't be their fault if a pharmacist decided to just go off and do this without direction.
So Mr. Jacobson, did you interview any of those individuals? I mean, did they mention anything to you about this is like a normal process? They've been doing it for time, or?
I did talk to the PIC as well as the district manager of that area, and it doesn't seem like it's normal process. They said that it didn't happen often if it did happen, and they couldn't really point to any internal processes that would support this practice.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, it sounds like it's not organization thing, it's like for that store, right? And
Well, if we want further information, I guess the conference is what we'll need.
so
That's
yeah,
fine.
so I keep my motion like for conference.
Did I have a second?
You did.
I thought you seconded.
Okay.
It was so long ago.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Who do you want present at the conference?
All individuals listed, including a member from CVS. Corporate representative.
Can we include the PIC also for that store? But not listed in the complaint. I don't know if you can ask.
Well, I think we want to know what the corporate's position is. We want to know the particular pharmacist that made this judgment call. So I don't know if the pick is going to be beneficial to ask. That's my opinion.
All right, I agree.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Item 4Q, complaint number 24-0367. The complainant, the patient's prescriber alleged that a pharmacy dispensed an incorrect medication to the patient.
I would accept the 3 hours of CE that they've submitted in error prevention if it board staff approves it. So 3 hours of non-disciplinary CE to the pharmacist.
I second.
With this one, I wasn't clear if there was really sufficient evidence. Yes, there was a 106, but we don't know that it was really related to that prescription. My thought was there wasn't sufficient evidence, but the pharmacist also already did the CE, so I was kind of leaning towards a dismissal on this one.
Dismiss and accept the CE? Or just dismiss?
Just dismiss is where my head was. And I know we have a motion in a second, but just discussion before we vote.
Yeah, just because when they did the inventory, they became like short on one of the med and over on the other one. I don't know if that's a proof of the error.
I'm leaning toward Ms. Walmsley's view of this.
I just don't know. I just don't feel confident that we can say without a shadow of a doubt that that was the cause of that.
Okay, so
But
is there
we
a
can
motion?
vote and see where it goes. You guys have a motion and a second on the floor for 3 hours of CE.
I'm willing to rescind my motion.
So yeah, we cannot like sure 100% that the error happened. So I would be fine with the letter of concern. So there's no CE there. It's not on the file. Like it's not online file. I mean, so I believe the letter of concern would be.
I still don't know that I think that there's sufficient evidence. I mean, we dismissed the case earlier today that we didn't feel like there was sufficient evidence, and that's kind of where my head is.
I'm leaning toward dismissal as well.
And
Okay.
that's the reason why I would dismiss it, is because of the insufficient evidence, not because they did the CE. I think it's a nice way that they responded to the error, but that's not the reason why I would lean towards that direction.
Is it a
But I'm
motion?
certainly open to other thoughts.
Well, I guess because it was the same strength, if it made me kind of connect the dots that it was an error, but
I mean,
don't know
you
that-
guys, I mean, take a stab at a motion and we can vote on it.
I do.
I mean, I'm glad that the
I'll
pharmacist.
keep my motion. I'll keep my motion. It looks like there's an error here. It was
3
the
hours
same
of CE.
strength and the patient had it. I don't have nothing that compels me to believe otherwise. Not a lot of evidence but nothing compels me otherwise as well. So I think I'll stay with my 3 hours of CE. Reinstate my motion.
And patient safety,
Yes,
and to accept the hours if staff accepts.
yes, exactly.
Do I have a second?
Motion fails.
Do I have an alternative motion?
My alternative motion, just a letter of concern. So
I feel like it's kind of one or the other though. Either we're
no,
dismissing it.
it is all about like non-disciplinary action for 3 hours just to send a message, like strong message to individual. And I believe the pharmacist already did the 3 hours, right? And they got the message. And if there
Well,
is
they can use that for their regular required CE. If we don't take an action.
Do I have a second for the letter of concern to the pharmacist? I'll second it. I think it's a good compromise between the two. Thoughts on the table? So I have a motion and a second. I guess let's do roll call since I don't know if there's going to be unanimous here.
Mr. Nutley,
Caught you eating.
Mr. Nassif, your vote.
Aye.
Ms. Walmsley,
Aye.
Mr. Thorwald,
Hey,
Ms. Nair.
Nay.
Motion failed.
Okay,
That's
I
just
have
a
motion to
full-
move to the
Full board.
motion.
Yeah. Just full board.
Yes, I agree with that.
Go to full board,
That's
yeah.
fine.
I motion, move to full board review next week.
We don't need to vote on that, do we?
No.
No,
Okay, fun discussion. Item 4R, complaint number 24-0350. A pharmacy received multiple repeat violations during routine compliance inspection.
Yeah, there's
Gonna
many.
make it a conference.
I agree.
I'll make that my motion.
second.
Motion and a second for a conference. All those in favor? Aye.
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 Any opposed?
So just a
Let's see.
question, so that would be in October, right? If that's right, just looking at the, the summary, the high risk nature of the operation, several repeat violations. Not accurately documenting sterile compounding logs, failure to conduct the media fill testing, failure to quarantine misbranded or expired products. Are we comfortable waiting until October for a conference, or?
What options do we have?
Well, they need notice, and I'm not trying to add to anyone's plate, but throwing it out there, does this rise to the level of a summary suspension? Would we have a special meeting in September? If you kind of look at, and I don't know, I'm sorry, and I don't know which compliance officer did this
Looks like it was
inspection.
Max.
Mr. Jacobson,
I mean, how does it look if we have all of these kind of serious violations with compounded medication, this high risk nature of their operation?
Yeah, so that's a good question. I had similar concerns. I did ask the PIC, just kind of point blank, similar questioning, if it's safe to operate this pharmacy, if he thinks that they're producing a sterile product that is indeed sterile. And I guess the one thing that was kind of their saving grace is that they do send out a large majority of their products for third-party sterility and testing, and they do come back with good results. So they haven't had a ton of products that failed their third-party testing. So I think they are producing a pretty good product, despite all of these repeat violations.
When is the October meeting?
16th and 17th.
so if there's like a public safety concern, what I suggest is if we can, I know it's possible to ask compliance officers to revisit there because they're already aware of those violations to see if it's improvement and can wait till October. We wait till October. Otherwise, we can do like emergency meeting if this is still like safety, public safety concern there.
I like what you're saying, Sharif. I think that's appropriate.
So to move it to conference for October, but in the interim, have Mr. Jacobson go out again and kind of see where things are? Is that
Yes.
okay?
Yeah, if it's improved and from his perspective or opinion, there is no public safety concern, we proceed for October. If there is any concern for public safety, we call for emergency meeting to address the issue.
I second that motion.
Forgive me, but what were the dates of the repeat inspections? So what was the time frame between the repeated violations?
Yeah, the two inspections were just about a year apart. I had done one, I think, in August of 2023, and then this one was, I think, June or July of 2024.
And they were the same violations, Max?
Correct. All four of these violations showed up as a repeat violation.
And they submitted corrective action plan last year. Is it a different corrective action plan than they submitted the year before?
I don't believe it's a different corrective action plan. They did have some turnover at PIC, and they do have a corporate structure that says that their compliance is helping get the ship right. I just didn't see that when I went to inspect.
So the fact that, Max said that they're sending it out to a third party to, do sterility testing and all of that, and that the inspections were a year apart and stuff. I don't know what you think. I'm less inclined to kind of think summary suspension. I don't think it'll hurt if Max wants to go out again before the conference, but when you have a year between inspections.
But I guess devil's advocate, Jean, is it's been a year between the inspections and nothing's changed. We don't have evidence of harm, which
We don't know.
I don't know if that means, the fact that they're sending it out, I think, is good. That makes me less nervous for immediate action, but the fact that there's been no improvement in a year, not even one of them has been rectified.
And Mr. Jackson, you said they use third party, right? They send their product to third party?
Correct. They send out a representative sample from each batch and have that sterility and potency tested.
Okay.
They do this to support longer BUDs on some of their products, but it does come back with the sterility testing proving that they are making a sterile compound.
And how they choose those samples? Is like random, or and this is my concern here, or they send
Yeah,
them?
that's a good question. I couldn't speak to how they choose those samples.
Yeah.
As far as I know, it's part of the batch that they produced. Whether it's the first products of the batch or the last products of the batch, or however they choose those samples, I'm not sure.
Yeah, that's the concern there.
Do we know if
Yeah,
they've
I
had
can use-
recalls or any FDA actions?
I'm not aware of any, but I didn't really look into it.
Are we able just to stick to the original plan? I mean, if it's feasible, that we have a inspection and determine if it needs immediate action at that point.
Yeah, because I believe the board notified the pharmacy back on July, right, Mr. Jacobson? You notify them in July about the violations?
Yes, definitely.
They've been about a month, so with those serious 4 violation, they should have been already addressed and fixed. So,
Or at least in progress?
or at least in progress, yeah. So if they didn't do anything regarding those 4 violation in a month, I don't think they're gonna do it in 2 months from now or 3 months. So I believe I keep my motion. So my motion is for conference, and then in October. In meantime, Board of Pharmacy Compliance Officer will revisit this pharmacy for reevaluation. And if there's no improvement or any public safety concern, we call out for emergency meeting. And I hope they can do the visit within a week or 2 weeks maximum.
And I did second that.
Do we want to
Should-
give Mr. Jacobson some parameters, or just if there's no improvements, then we move to
To emergency, yeah,
emergency?
yeah.
If no improvement,
If there's no improvement,
or just at his discretion? I mean,
I
he
mean,
might
if there's no
want some
improvement for
guidelines.
those, I mean, he might find other violation, we don't know. But if there's no improvement on those 4 items that listed, or he might find something else that'd be more concern, right? So definitely for those 4 items, and if he notices anything else need to be addressed.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Before we vote on this, I didn't see the prior inspection document in the book. If that could be added before the full board meeting, I would appreciate that to compare the last inspection to this inspection. Just a comment for the staff. In the response from last time. But I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Item 4S, complaint number 24-0287. A pharmacy failed to comply with the reporting requirements outlined in ARS 362608.
So
Okay, go
the
ahead.
fact that it's repeating issue, to me, makes it more of an issue for me. Go ahead, Mr. Nassif.
Yeah, I believe obviously they've been doing it manually, like, which is me, at the end of the day, someone would go manually and do the reporting. I understand people miss one day here, one day there, maybe, like, let's say one person know how to do it and this person on vacation or something.
Mhm.
I understand that, but those many days it's concerning.
Mhm.
Keep reading the report. I believe they were able to fix it, and I don't know if any of CPNP department there, but I see like they satisfied now with the outcome and the issue is resolved.
I was thinking a 500 non-disciplinary fine.
To
The permit holder.
holder.
That's all that's named in the report and the complaint, I mean.
I have a question. What is the paperwork required in the CSPMP reporting agreement?
They electronically download the prescriptions that were filled that are controlled substances that are required to be reported.
So it's an electronic download.
Correct. It's a daily, supposed to be submitted daily basis. The pharmacy will submit their control prescription that dispensed to a patient, where physicians or providers or and state and pharmacists can look into this report.
And who is allowed to do that?
It is normally that done automatically. There is no rules who will submit. Some people do it manually, and anyone can do it, like pharmacist, technician, or IT department, or the system itself. But is required by pharmacist in charge, and I'll be corrected here if any of the staff can correct me, is the permit holder and pharmacy in charge responsibility to make sure the compliance with these rules.
Well, to me, if you can make a phone call and you have a phone, you should be able to accomplish that. So to me, I don't see any excuse for not filing that then.
I mean, yeah, I agree. I mean, they said there's a glitch in the system. They do it manually. I understand the glitch one time, twice, 3 times, 4 times, but there's many days there.
Well, and
Yeah,
sorry, Tariq. The other thing I just want to call to attention is in the complaint summary, it says the pharmacy was contacted by email a total of 5 times and by phone 9 times since 2024 regarding the delinquencies. So
Mhm.
it looks like we've already given them a whole lot of opportunities to correct this problem. And they haven't, hopefully they figured it out at this point, but it took a whole lot of time and a lot of effort of the board staff for us to get here for their lack of compliance.
I agree.
Given all of that, I think that action needs to be taken.
I mean, I threw out something. Does anybody agree? You think it should be disciplinary, non-disciplinary, more or less?
More to me.
I would like to hear from our CPMP staff. Any of them with us here today? I don't know.
Hi, Demi Morales here with the
Hi.
CSP
Hi.
staff.
Yeah,
I have been working with Keystone Pharmacy, and they did state that they were working with a third-party company that submits their data. There was a firewall issue. It has since been fixed, and I do check their status daily, and they are submitting daily now.
thank you. And during your investigation, did they were like responsive or compliant? What
They
you
were
asked?
yeah, they were responsive. I spoke with them over phone and through email. I think at first they may not have known exactly what was going on, and then they were able to work with the third-party company that they work with and get it figured out.
How long have they been in compliance for?
They submitted all their data, all their missing data in June. So shortly after the subpoena was sent, and they have been in compliance since.
Okay.
So we sent
I
it
would-
on June 10th, I believe. June 16th, they have had everything uploaded.
And it's not been a problem since.
Not been a problem since, correct?
I think I would be in favor of Ms. Snare's original motion of a non-disciplinary fine. I mean, the fact that it took this long to get there is a problem, but it also seems like a little bit of an extraordinary circumstance. And the fact that the pharmacy was cooperative and it appears to be rectified makes me at least satisfied, but I agree that there needs to be something on the record.
Okay.
Now that I've heard the rest of that, I would agree with Ms. Nair's motion.
So we have a motion. I can second. I don't know if somebody second the motion. So I second the motion for $500 fee.
Non-disciplinary fine.
Not non-disciplinary fine. Yeah.
Ms. Galvin, is that appropriate?
Yes, it is.
Okay. I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Item 4T, complaint number 24-0138. A complainant alleged that a pharmacy dispensed a 6-week supply of medication with a 4-day expiration date.
Is it possible to wrap this into the other conference? I know they both have to do with the same pharmacy and both have to do with beyond use dating.
Isn't that conference scheduled though for this month?
It is.
Yes.
Yeah, so this is a separate complaint, separate number.
Okay. I thought so. I just thought I'd ask.
I appreciate it, yeah.
So
I
so
think
conference
conference.
this. I'm sorry. Should we have conference for this kind of the same, right?
Same company and both have to
company.
do with beyond use dating.
Okay.
but different people were involved, I believe. So,
I'm thinking that to move this one to full board review for next week. So maybe we can hear from the same company and then we decide about this case.
We would not be able to tack on this case
Okay.
for Chi with the case that is set for conference
Okay,
next week.
okay.
then I guess I would move for a conference. I don't know. What is everyone else thinking?
Would an option be, Miss Galvin, to hold off on voting on this item, given there are obviously two sets of circumstances, but in the event that we learn something at the conference, to come back to this item after the conference and determine what the appropriate outcome would be, if there's any types of learnings, or should they be considered entirely separately?
I don't know what you can learn at the conference from the pharmacy that could be applicable to this set of facts without the pharmacy explicitly addressing what occurred in this case.
Okay, that's fair.
And that would go to, a notice issue for them. I wouldn't want to extrapolate something they said at the conference to this case when they haven't been noticed that this is under consideration.
Okay, that's fair. That's a good point. So Ms. Nair, your motion was for a conference for this?
Yes, that's my motion, yeah.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Ms. Nair, if you could do item 4U, please.
Sure. 23-0663, a complainant alleged that a prescription container filled for 20 tablets contained only 11 tablets. I'm not sure that there's enough evidence here. I don't know what you guys were thinking.
Yeah, I didn't see any evidence for that. For this, and I move to dismiss.
I'll make that I'll second. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, thank you.
Item 4V, complaint number 24-0277. A pharmacy closed without providing at least 14 days of notice to the board.
So going back to the fine for this violation, is it like $500, just like?
Yeah, there's not one. There's just the not providing notice before the business relocates. I mean, that's similar, but I didn't see one for not providing notice for closing a pharmacy.
I have a question for the staff. Are there any other, is this the last remaining permit for this company that's open?
Yes.
All of the rest of theirs have been closed at this point?
Yes.
Okay.
So if they closed already, can we find them?
Yeah, we can.
Okay, so this is my motion. I will go with the $500 just to mirror the relocation thing. So I believe $500 will be reasonable, like.
Because that presented a patient access issue, I would be in favor of that, but disciplinary is my thought.
I would agree with that.
But the PIC is not listed also, right? In this.
Right, it would be to the permit. So if they wanted to open another permit, they would have disciplinary action taken against their permit.
Okay, I agree. That's your motion?
I think you made the motion, but I was just asking.
I did like non-disciplinary, so but you moved to disciplinary, right? So
Yeah, okay, so I'll make it official and make it $500 disciplinary fine to the permit holder.
Okay. I second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Staff, did we hit everything?
Madam President, this is Ram.
Yes, I run.
So can I add my comments to complaint 24-367? I tried to add my comments earlier, but I didn't press the mute button properly.
What,
Four
was that
Q.
4Q?
Yes, for Q 24-0367.
Yes, go ahead.
So the page number 797 has the PIC statement. He admitted that there was a mistake in the last paragraph. And also page number 809, those tablets were sent by the patient, you know, the photograph. I apologize, I did not title that properly. Those are Percocet tablets, you know, generic Percocet tablets.
What was that second page number, Rum?
809 in a black background. Those were sent by the patient. Page number 809.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
So
And our previous motion was letter of concern. Is that correct? Is that
No,
where
it was
we,
Full
Full
board
Full
review.
board.
Board.
oh, full board review?
Yep.
Oh, because we didn't come to a
yeah, if
decision,
it's-
right? That's right.
So the page 809, Rum, if I'm understanding you,
Yeah,
was a photo from the patient of what
Yes.
they received.
yes. She
Okay,
she's aggregated the Percocet tablet specifically to send it to me.
and let me see if I can find the tablet.
Yeah, it says M5222.
I mean, that changes my opinion. If we have evidence, like
Yes.
that changes my opinion entirely.
So do you want to rescind, well, we full vote, we didn't really, I guess we never made. So I'll be willing to make a motion for 3 hours of non-disciplinary CE for the pharmacist in error prevention and accept what's been done if board approves what's already been submitted.
I second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Thank you, Ron, for that clarification. That's very helpful and will help us get through the meeting at the, next week.
Thanks, Madam
Um,
President. Appreciate you.
Anything else, staff, that we're missing or need to go back to?
You covered it, Madam Chair.
All right, well, I think
Uh,
we are good. Go ahead.
Oh, Madam Chair, I just wish to apologize for my short interruption there. My mother went into the hospital this morning, and that was the doctor at the hospital calling me to let me know how she's doing.
You're
Oh,
fine.
no.
I hope
I
she
didn't,
was better.
I didn't even notice it,
Ah.
Frank, but thank you.
Hopefully she's okay.
Yeah.
She's going to be okay. That's what he told me. So just, otherwise I would not have taken the call.
Oh, no worries. Thank you. Thank you, Frank. We'll go ahead and adjourn for the day and we will see everybody next week. Thank you so much.